All Things Reds All-Star Special. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Tom.
And I'm Kim.
We are three old Reds fans coming to you from Studio 82, just down the street from our good friends at Beans in the heart of Cedarville and the birthplace of Bumpus Jones. Bumpus, of course, played in the pre-All-Star era. But if he hadn't, he never would have made an All-Star team, I'm sorry to say. Still, he holds a very special place in Reds history and in our hearts.
That's right.
And for more on the legend of Bumpus, you're just going to have to listen to episode 6 if you haven't already. But in this episode, we talk about the Reds' current All-Stars, and we will revisit a lot of Reds' midsummer classic history, as only we can because, well, we're old. So, we will get to that history. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. First of all, we have 2 All-Stars this year. Zack Cozart, who is batting 9th. That got released today. Figures they bury our guy at the bottom of the lineup.
Hope they don't pull him before he gets up.
I know.
I tell you. Is that Joe Madden doing that? Is that who's doing that?
Madden's complimentary of Cozart, so I think he'll get his AB.
Okay, as long as he gets one AB. That's good. And, of course, Joey Votto will play a reserve role.
His 5th All-Star.
His 5th All-Star appearance.
All universe this year. Playing like an MVP.
And his first since 2013, which, yeah, he's leading the National League with 26 homers, a .633 slugging percentage, and a 1.06 OPS. And he's just...
And how many RBIs does he have?
Like
68.
68, but he doesn't want to talk about that.
He don't want to talk about it.
Does not want to talk about RBIs. Anyway, Zack, batting .316, 941 OPS. He's on pace for like career highs and everything. I mean, I looked at his stats yesterday, and everything you look at, rate-wise, he's higher, quite a bit higher than anything he's ever been, and then just numbers-wise, like home runs, RBIs, doubles, he's over half of his career highs. So if he stays healthy and can start playing every day instead of every other day, maybe he can make some of those
he was hitting
career
well.
highs.
He was hitting well last year before he got hurt.
Yep.
Yeah, he was. He was. He's continued that, and it's sparked a lot of the trade talk, and we'll talk more about that next week for sure. Maybe we'll have some time today. We'll see. But what about the last beginning of the All-Star break? What'd you think of that road trip, Kim? I mean, we thought, hey, going to Colorado, Arizona, that doesn't sound promising, but we went 4-3.
Yeah, we talked last episode that we were tied with San Diego for the worst road record in the major leagues, and going to Colorado and getting a split, having a good outing by Homer. Jeff pointed out before we started broadcasting, Homer had 0 walks that game, which sort of surprised me since he's been
in the Colorado game.
Yeah. But just a good series overall, very competitive, and even the game where I think both games they lost, they were in the games. And then going to Arizona, losing the first one to Greinke. That was tough, but turning around, performing well. Homer again, and we talked about yesterday in the 7th inning, he threw 97 miles an hour. Tom even texted and said, "When's the last time we won a pitcher's duel?" And I think Tom, was sometime in May.
Early June. June 2nd was the last one I saw, and that was 3-2. Whether that's a pitching duel or not, I don't know.
A really low-scoring game for Reds
that's
this
how
year.
long it's been.
Yeah.
And, okay, so why do you think this road trip was better? I think it's a duh. I think it's Homer and Castillo. It's the starting pitching coming around. That makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah,
I mean, if you got guys that are going to go out there and keep you in the game.
And Sal Romano.
Romano had a good outing, too.
Very good outing.
Yeah.
Jackson Stevens, didn't he pitch? No, he pitched before they went on the road.
That was the last. That was right before they went on the road.
Regardless, they had some decent outings compared to where they've been. And lately with Bailey back, he's turned it up a notch for us.
I mean, if you can get a 1, 2, and 3 starter that can keep you in the game, this team is going to win a lot of games with the offense and defense.
Well, our friend Nick Carrington, who we had on 3 or 4 weeks ago now, he had tweeted a while back, and then I think he retweeted it again, or followed up the tweet somehow and said, "Here's the prediction I made. If this team gets starting pitching, they'll be more than a 500 team in the second half." And you feel like that's possible because they just went 4-3
against two very good teams.
Two good teams on the road, and they've been a horrible road team. So it's an interesting thing to contemplate. So that leads me to the next question. we talked, I don't remember, I would have to go back and listen exactly. Each of us had a number in the 70s of how many games we thought they could win. Right now they are 9.5 games back, 8 in the loss column, which is certainly worth paying attention to. But what are they, 9 games under, I think?
I believe 10.
Yeah, how many wins do they have right
39 and 49.
39 and 49. You're right, 39 and 49.
now? If they finish out this way, it's 78 wins.
Yeah. Is that right? So, do the...
He's an English major.
I'm not the math guy. Try to figure it out, try to understand it. But anyway, can this team, seeing what we're seeing in the rotation, get 80 wins, get into the 80s somewhere, at least the low 80s?
I believe it can.
I mean, that requires getting their record. Well, 80 wins wouldn't be 500, but it'd be within 2. I can do that math.
Within 1.
Well, it'd be 80.
81 and 81.
Or 80 and 82.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd be 2 games under. Could they finish as high as 2 games under, or maybe even win 83 games or something like that? Is that possible with this pitching staff? And assuming our hitters we don't have a bunch of second half tailspins
Or injuries.
or injuries. Yeah,
We have no one in the home run derby, so that's a positive after the last 2 years.
They asked Joey to.
yeah. He didn't. He declined.
Did you see his comment as to why he's not?
Yeah.
Incredible. I love it.
I do think I think they could easily be in the 80s if people stay healthy, including the pitching, right? Mm-hmm. But with these new pitchers coming up, they're going to be way better than the pitching we saw at the beginning of the season.
Right.
All things being equal, we're saying that without trades. You're not losing a Cozart.
You have to look at what we have today.
Yeah, what you have today, and getting healthy, and maybe even DeSclafani.
Which
he's
could
with
be
the Cubs. He's not. I believe they said yesterday in the broadcast that he's not holding back. He's starting to come. He's starting to pitch, and they're hoping in August he'll be ready to go.
Okay. Well, that'd be great. If we can do that.
Okay, and that's also barring trades, which we can talk about another time.
We don't know what's going to happen.
That's a big discussion.
I think everybody's, just in the short of it, I think we've agreed there's a lot of guys that aren't untouchable on this team if you get the right offer. Mm-hmm. If people are willing to overpay, whether it's Iglesias or an outfielder or anybody.
And you got to hand it to the Reds.
Nobody's going to pay for Votto, but other than that.
And they're not going to give him up.
They're not going to give him up anyway.
You got to hand it to the Reds organization, though, that even if you trade Hamilton or some of these other guys, there are people ready to come up and take their place, right? Whether it be a Winker or who's the third baseman guy, Senzel, or, if Peraza goes, you got Scooter. So there are a lot of position players that... More
than we had 2-3 years ago.
It's amazing because 2 years ago we had nothing.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing in the farm system. And Williams' predecessor, what's his name? The old GM from the Cardinals. Jocketty, and what he did with Chapman and got nothing for him.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how quickly they've turned it around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, some of the trades really worked out well.
Oh, very well.
Duvall, Schebler, to name two, especially Schebler.
Here we go.
Jeanette picking him up.
Oh, Jeanette.
That was
well, they didn't pay anything for him.
Right.
That was just to pick him up off the waiver wire.
Right.
So the power surge has been a huge part of this season, this offense, and we got 3 guys: Votto, Shebs, and Duvall with 20+. And you were quoting the 3 guys in, was it 70?
Yep.
So it was, who was it?
Perez, Bench, and May.
And May had the most, didn't he?
May had 20.
May had 20.
Bench either had 27 or 28, and Perez had 1 more. Now they finished up 45, Bench 40, Perez, and I think Lee May with 34.
Okay. So they put a graphic on the screen the other day, watching the game on TV, because I've been tracking this a little bit, like, hey, we could get 4 guys to 20, which has only happened a couple times. And, of course, I was thinking the 4th guy would be Suarez, and it still could get there. He's got, 12? Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden we got Scooter Jeanette with 15, and they put the graphic up. It's the 3rd time in Reds history that there's been 4 guys with 15+ at the break. So the first time was in 1956. I don't have the numbers. I just have the names.
Wally Post.
Ted
Kluszewski.
Yeah. Frank Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
And Gus Bell. In 2003, we had 4 guys. Who do you think those guys are?
Eric?
No. Eric was in the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
Eric
three.
Davis is long
Sean
gone.
Casey,
No.
What was that big muscular guy?
Glenn Bragg.
Gant?
No. Okay,
No,
Ron
no, you guys
Gant,
are-
Greg Vaughn.
No, you're not. No.
We got to have someone.
No. All right.
Give
There's
me a position.
We need a younger guy. We're too old. We're too old Reds fans.
Three outfielders. It was a three-man
Oh,
outfit.
Adam Dunn,
Adam Dunn.
Griffey Jr.,
Griffey.
Austin Kearns.
Austin Kearns.
Wow.
And he's a third or fourth generation player. And he's got a brother.
Buddy Bell.
No, Boone.
Aaron Boone.
Yeah. So those four guys did that. So this is pretty historic what we're seeing out. Now we know home runs are up in baseball around, but still the Reds are part of that instead of lagging behind and being the
So
team
Zack
that can't
Cozart
hit
doesn't
it.
even have 10 home runs?
He's got 9.
9. He hasn't had one in a while.
He's been out a lot and
It's
playing
not
every
out of
other
the question
day.
he could hit 20.
No, it's not, and it's not a question Suarez could get there either. So it's certainly not out of the question. So, all right. Anything else about what's going on now? We gotta talk about. Or are we ready to move on to our All-Star special?
Mezzo should be coming off the DL soon. Be
Yeah.
interesting to see how he does the rest of the year and into next year. But
Yeah, I mean it's a real unknown whether he's ever gonna recapture his career or not.
Okay, so let me ask you guys. When is the last time... The Reds are in last place, okay? But when's the last time you've kind of felt okay about the Reds even though they're in last place? Usually, I have to be honest,
Well,
by the time they're 10 games out, I'm just not interested anymore because they're not fun. They disappoint you so often. This team, I always feel like there's hope.
well, yeah, because even the other day they were losing 6-0. It was one of those late games. I think it was the Friday night game in Arizona, right? They're down 6-0. I'm like sleeping here in the recliner for hours. I wake up, and all of a sudden, was it Votto hits a 2-run homer,
yep,
and then
2 outs later, Shebs, I believe it was.
Shebs hit a home run. How could I forget? Yeah, I couldn't sleep after that. No, I'm just kidding. He hits a home run, and then they got like the tying run on deck or on at the plate or something. It's like this team. It doesn't matter the situation. They just believe that they got a lot of belief in themselves for a team under 10.
They do.
10 games under 500.
How many last place teams you know are like that?
They're mentally there's a lot of mental toughness I think on this team, and I think it's just it's the starting pitching. I mean, this team is hanging around with the Cubs and the Brewers easily if they'd had good starting pitching. I mean, even average. I mean, we didn't have to have a Cy Young guy
Agreed.
to compete in this division. Maybe to win after this division you do, but to compete in this division you don't need a Cy Young guy. So, anyway. All right. Our Reds All-Star trivia, remembrances, memories and stuff. Before we get into our list, I had some Reds All-Star first I wanted to share with you that I thought you might find interesting. Who was the first All-Star game was in 1933, and of course there was a Red on the team because everybody gets a player on the team, right? Who was the Reds' first All-Star in 1933? Any guess?
Holy cow! Sorry,
So
we're not that old.
It wasn't holy cow.
We need your dad for this one.
This is 4 years before his birth.
He's not that old.
A guy named Chick Hafey. Have you ever heard of Chick Hafey?
Good first name.
All right. He's a Hall of Fame outfielder. He's elected in 71 by the Veterans Committee. 317 career hitter. He was 1 for 4 that game, played left field at Comiskey Park. So that was the first Reds All-Star. All right, who was the first Red? And I was looking to see who the first Red to homer in an All-Star game was. Well, 2 guys homered in an All-Star game, and it was the first Reds to homer in an All-Star game. So it happened in the 50s.
Ted
Kluszewski and
Frank
Robinson.
no.
Wally Post.
No. Who was the other guy on that list we had earlier, the 15?
And we said Wally.
And then you mentioned his grandson as well.
Bell.
Gus Bell, yeah. So Klue started first in that game. This was an entertaining game. The American League won 11-9 in Cleveland. There were lots of offensive records set in that game that still stand. He had a 2-run homer off Bob Porterfield. I don't know who that is. I don't recognize that name. With Duke Snyder on. Put him up 7-5 in the 5th. And then Bell hit a pinch 2-run homer in the 8th off a guy named Bob Keegan with Willie Mays on base for a 9-8 lead. Those were the only NL homers. The AL had homers, 2 by Al Rosen, Ray Boone, and Larry Doby. And the managers were Walter Alston and Casey Stengel. So just all these great old names. When you look at All-Star stuff, it's just like, wow. You know, when you're watching these games, you don't realize how many Hall of Famers sometimes you're seeing. When you look back, you're like, wow, you saw a lot of them. So who was the first Reds pitcher to start? And he also actually was the first Reds pitcher to win an All-Star game.
Maloney?
No. I'll have to give you the decade because it's a wild guess, right, without it. The 30s.
That doesn't help me.
He's very famous for another feat. Johnny Vandermeer.
No, I was going to say.
In 38 at Crosley Field. It was the first All-Star game in Cincinnati. The National League won 4-1. He was a winning pitcher. He threw 3 innings, gave up 1 hit, left with a 1-0 lead. His only single was to Joe Cronin. In the second, he struck out Jimmy Fox. Now, this isn't as great a run as like the Carl Hubble one that you've mentioned before, where he struck out, 5 Hall of Famers in a row?
But Hubble and Cronin, I think, were part of those.
Were they?
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, he struck out Jimmy Fox, and then he got ground outs from Joe DiMaggio and Bill Dickey. Vandermeer was a 4-time All-Star.
It's pretty cool he got to start the game at Crosley Field.
Right, and he had thrown those consecutive no-hitters in June, and then he got to start the All-Star game in July. The first Red to win an MVP in an All-Star game. It was first awarded in '62, and we're going to talk more about this later as we go through our moments, and that's Perez. Tony Perez. It was also the first All-Star game to be televised. It was his first of 7 appearances. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. The first Red to be top vote getter, and the records I found, it was like they only date to like 1970. So the first Red to be top vote getter was in 72 and 73.
Johnny Bench.
Johnny Bench. All right. Here's a good question for you. Who was the first Red to win the Home Run Derby?
I would guess Todd Frazier.
No. The inaugural year of 1989, which was a pretty famous All-Star game because Bo Jackson led off that game with a home run and won MVP. From what I could tell, Eric Davis and Ruben Sierra were like tied for the Home Run Derby title that year. So Eric Davis was in the Home Run Derby and won a share of it.
Did not know that.
So, anyway, some interesting stuff, some All-Star firsts. So we're going to move on to, we come up with this list in our lifetime of top performances, moments, memories, whatever. So we're going to take some turns here. I'll start off with 67, which we mentioned. Perez hit the game-winning home run in the 15th inning off Catfish Hunter. And Hunter had thrown like 4 innings because they were running out of pitchers because it was the 15th inning.
Had to be the longest game in history, right?
At that time it was, yeah. At that time it was.
It's not anymore?
I think there was one longer since. Of course, then a few years ago they suspended it and stopped it. That was his first of 7 All-Star game appearances. That was really the first year Perez. His first 2 years he kind of platooned, and that was the first year he really played all the time. He hit like 17 homers at the break, and I put a couple videos on Twitter and Facebook this afternoon. So if you go there to our Twitter and Facebook pages, the Miami Herald did a story, and there's a video of Perez talking because he works down there. He works for the Marlins, and it's the 50th anniversary of it. So they did a piece on that, and then MLB website's I found a video on there of a historical shot of him hitting the home run and coming in the dugout. He's being greeted by Cepeda and Clemente, and he says, I still have a picture of that. So that's a pretty neat story there. So he was, as I said, the first Red to win that award. 1970, the year Riverfront opened, and of course the big thing that happened that year, they got to host the All-Star game and another extra inning game in the 12th. Pete Rose is on base. Jim Hickman, who played for the Cubs at that time, in his only All-Star game, hit a single to center off of Clyde Wright, who was an Angels pitcher, in his only All-Star game. And Pete Rose, a 17-time All-Star, comes flying home and runs over Ray Fosse. We've all seen the highlight many, many times. Some say ruined Ray Fosse's career. He actually did have another good year after that and then didn't do much after that. But that was the highest television rating of an All-Star game in All-Star game history, for whatever reason. And maybe that's another reason it lives on so much, because so many people saw it. So Rose didn't start the game, of course. He's at 12th inning, The starting outfield was Mays, Aaron, and Rico Carty, so he didn't get to start. So, but he still made that lasting impression of that game, and that's just one of the Rose. That's a play that sort of defines Pete Rose's career.
It doesn't matter if it's an All-Star game. I'm still giving it my best.
Yeah, exactly. You got criticized for it. Why would you run over a guy in an All-Star game?
But if you notice, he went back to him to kind of
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
see.
he did.
So
Yes.
He did. So, all right, Kim, tell us about 1971.
That game was in Detroit. Johnny Bench hit a home run off a pitcher named Vida Blue.
Yeah.
one of the great baseball names of all time.
The Almost Red?
Yeah, until Bowie
Almost Red.
Kuhn
Bowie Kuhn
said,
said,
they're getting too good. We can't let that trade happen.
That's right.
That was a travesty.
Bench ended up going 2 for 4 that game. He hit his home run in the second inning. On base was an old nemesis, Pops, Willie Stargell
Yeah.
from Pittsburgh. Bench hit the ball just a shade to the right of center field in the upper deck.
That's right.
No matter what people say, that was a shot.
Shows you the strength of Johnny Bench.
That's right.
Also that game, home runs by Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente. And that game was really well known for Reggie Jackson hitting a 2-run homer off Doc Ellis. I think Doc Ellis was clean that game. But
Maybe.
hit it off the roof at Tiger Stadium.
Yes.
Cut the lead to 3-2.
That was epic.
Oh, how about that light? There was a light up there,
Yep.
wasn't there? And it just... Yeah.
Little pre Roy
Natural.
Hobbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. That's where they got... I guarantee that's where they got the
I'm
idea
sure.
in the natural.
Also homer that game, Frank Robinson and Harmon Killebrew homered for the American League. And a total of 6 home runs in that game by Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And you watch the video of it now, and you hear Kurt Gowdy calling the play-by-play. And for someone like me, a throwback of Kurt Gowdy, Tony Kubek,
Yeah.
Joe Garagiola.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's special.
And what did... And you were saying earlier, what did... as on the replay, you found it on YouTube, what does Gowdy say right before he hits it?
I think Gowdy said after he hit it, I think he made mention of the fact
Oh.
that I was just about to say nobody homers off of Vida Blue. He doesn't give up home runs, and their bench going upper deck in
Yeah.
right field, just to the shade of right of center field.
Okay. So, Tom, tell us about 1972. What happened then?
Yeah, so 1972 All-Star Game. One of our favorite Reds, Joe Morgan, was starting at second base, of course, batting leadoff. And it was his first year at the Reds, and his third All-Star game. And Joe had a single off Orioles pitcher Dave McNally, and scored a guy from the Padres by the name of Nate Colbert, who I don't remember that guy.
Yeah, I remember.
I remember Nate.
And it was a walk-off single. So because Joe got that hit, he was MVP.
Right. Well, that's what happens when you come in. And it's interesting. He started, and he's still batting in the 10th inning.
Yep.
So the All-Star game, I remember Bench played the whole game one night,
Yep.
and St. Guillen never got in a game.
I remember that.
I don't remember what year that was, but it's back in those days. So, and that was that Bench being first top vote getter, first rated to be top vote getter that same year. So, so yeah, Morgan, that was great because we just gotten him right, and then he does that, and makes you fall in love with those guys even more. So tell us, you get the next one too, Tom. 1976.
Well, yeah, 76 when the Big Red Machine was at its peak. The game was in Philadelphia. Part of that National League streak we talked about, I think it was 19 out of 20 years the National League won, something like that. So part of that streak, National League won this one too. And this was a big one in Reds history because the Reds had Rose, Morgan, Foster, Bench, Concepcion, all starting, 5 starters. I mean, it must have looked like the Reds were just going on the field.
Yeah, exactly.
And not only that, but Griffey and Perez were on the team too. So 7 all-stars, which I'm assuming that has got to be.
Well, actually, it's one of the 4 hot. I got that coming in a little bit, but we'll talk about that. Yeah, but you're thinking the right thing.
Another interesting thing, Jeff, that you talked about earlier was the Reds players that we just mentioned had 7 of the 10 total hits the National League had in that game. So 7 for 14, 4 RBIs, 4 runs, the Reds did. Well, Foster started in center field, hit cleanup, had 3 RBIs on a ground out against, remember this guy, Mark Fidrich.
Yeah, that was his one.
The Bird.
His one big year.
Mm-hmm.
Scored Steve Garvey, a nemesis from the Dodgers. The Reds always seem to be fighting against the Dodgers in the 70s. And he got that single in the first, and he got a 2-run home run off Catfish Hunter in the third, and his teammate Joe Morgan was on. So George Foster winning the MVP in 1976. That was a big year for the Reds for the All-Star game.
Yeah, really. I mean, as I was researching this and found all that stuff, I'm like, I can't believe I don't remember all this stuff. It's just amazing what
really is
the way they dominated that game, and it was symbolic of their dominance of those years.
And I will say, I think even as you go across the country, you find Reds fans in other parts of the country around our age because of this team in the 70s. Yeah. They grew up and they were, how...
Well, remember this guy here, Kim. I mean, he was living in South Carolina, and it captured his imagination as a...
Boy's life.
As a young buck.
Cub Scout magazine.
That's right. All right, so there was another cool thing about the whole 70s thing because of the Reds' persona, their way they like to present themselves. So what was that, Kim?
Well, the culture of the day, the Reds, they had the... didn't they have the low stirrups? I always like the high stirrups. They had the low stirrups. No facial hair, no long hair. And in the All-Star game, the Reds players would break out, especially Morgan, would break out the white shoes. Mm-hmm. And it was just special to see so many Reds. As Tom mentioned, we had 5 starters, 7. I think at one time, either 6 or 7 were on the field at one time. I remember watching that and
probably
just
sure,
amazed and so excited. This is my team. It's going to be like this forever.
Yeah, right.
And seeing Morgan at second base with those white shoes, I mean, he was fast as it was. It just made him look quicker. But it was something special to see.
Yeah, because their shoes during the season were completely black.
Right.
If they had any white on them, they had to shoe polish them black.
I was going to bring that up,
Yeah. Neat. All right. So, the 70s, the greatest decade in Reds history.
Yes.
We hope to have one someday to match it, but I don't know if we ever will. But that's the greatest decade. So the 80 comes. We still got some big red machine parts around. Mm-hmm. So tell us what happened. What happened in 80, Kim?
Well, Senior, as Junior's dad,
yeah.
Ken, who I think was just such a I don't know if you were to say underrated describes it accurately, but he
overlooked.
Was so vital. Well, they had all these shining stars, and you just didn't see Griffey as much.
Well, they had Hall of Famers, and then you have Cincinnati Reds Hall of Famers.
But Griffey in right field, number 30, I mean, he'd get on base. And Joe Morgan did not like it when he got on base because they paid attention to Griffey, and it bothered Joe at the plate.
I don't remember
Joe was
that.
on record for saying that.
Yeah.
He just wasn't he didn't like it. But Griffey, so, in the 75 World Series against the Red Sox, didn't he lay down a 2-strike bunt?
No,
right, and no one saw it coming. The guy was just incredible arm. Almost won the batting title.
Pretty cool too.
Anyway,
cool dude.
He did not start. Senior came into the game in the 4th inning at Dodger Stadium. Went 2 for 3 in a victory that was a 4-2 victory. Homered in the 5th off of Tommy John, and led off with a single in the 7th off of Steve that started the rally for the final run. And I actually have a conversation with Tommy John years ago. I think I told you guys, we were on the phone and we finished our business. I said, Tommy, I got to tell you, now that we're done, I got to tell you, when I was a kid, I used to hate your guts. And I told him why. I said, back then in the paper, they would have the picture of a game and would have their lifetime record against that team. And all the teams that the Reds would play seemingly would be like 6-12, 2-8. But Tommy John, he would have a lifetime winning record against the Reds.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, yeah, I could get Bench on those slow change-ups and get him chasing, but I could never seem to get Rose and Morgan and Griffey out coming from him. But he had a lifetime record that was really good against him.
It's a neat conversation you got to have.
Yeah.
Most people only know Tommy John for, is that the surgery guy?
Yeah, he's not a surgeon. He was a pitcher.
Yeah.
And a good one.
And he came back from that surgery, and, that's what I was amazed yesterday watching Homer Bailey humming it at 97 in the 7th inning. Tommy John, I don't remember too much before the surgery, but after the surgery came back, and he was just a junk ball pitcher, but a very effective one.
Well, nowadays some guys come back throwing harder. In fact, now all the college programs, they put their kids on Tommy John rehab exercises, whether they have the surgery or not.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
It does. It does. All right, now let's look at 1982. Tom, we've got one more Reds MVP.
Well, another guy that was overlooked some in the Big Red Machine because he's not a Hall of Famer is Dave Concepcion. Concepcion won the MVP that year. He was, of course, the starting shortstop. His only hit was a 2-run home run off of a guy. Remember this guy? Dennis Eckersley.
Oh, yeah.
Who I think of as an A, but maybe he was pitching for the Boston Red Sox at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And remember Dale Murphy, the only bright spot with the Atlanta Braves during those years?
Oh, yeah.
He was a great player.
Yeah.
And,
won a couple MVPs.
So Concepcion got the MVP for that home run. Also in that game, Pete Rose, who's like in every All-Star game, sacrifice fly. And poor Mario Soto, you would have to say one of the great Reds pitchers who had great years but had losing records in the 80s.
Yeah.
And then Tom Hume got the save for the game. And he had some good years with the Reds, but not really too many.
Yeah.
Just a few years.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a bright spot on some of those bad teams
in
the 80s. So, all right, Kim, in 88, tell us what happened in 88.
Well, there were no Red starters. How about that?
There was no Red starters. But where was the game?
The game was in Cincinnati, the old Riverfront Stadium. Chris Sabo was a rookie that year, and Chris came in and ran for the kid. The kid, otherwise known as Gary Carter. And he actually stole a base, stole second. He didn't play in the field. So he got a little more time than Archibald Moonlight Graham, didn't he? So, Barry Larkin played that game, and he went 0 for 2. And Danny Jackson, remember Danny Jackson, who a couple of years later would have a phenomenal year. But Danny Jackson made the All-Star team as a Cincinnati Red, did not get into the game.
No, did not pitch.
So that's interesting. That was the last All-Star game at Riverfront. The first one was in 72 or 70. Which in 70 the Reds were, great. And in 88
they weren't so good.
Yeah.
2 years before their next title, though.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, 2 years. So speaking of that, 1990, games at Wrigley Field, and we got this phenom pitcher.
The All-American boy.
Jack Armstrong. He's 11-3. He's 2.28 ERA at the break. He's the starting pitcher. And I remember being so excited. We got that. And Soto started like in 83, I think. But to have a Reds pitcher start the All-Star game, because, we never have the good pitchers, it seems like. We got one. Maybe a couple good relievers. Like, why don't we get the good pitchers, So here we are. We got this guy. He starts. He pitched 2 innings. He gave up an infield single to Wade Boggs. He struck out Canseco and McGuire, the Bash brothers, in that game. But that was kind of it for Jack Armstrong. He had 9 bad starts after the break. He got banished to the bullpen. He had like 1 good 3-inning outing in the World Series that year, and he didn't have much of a career after that. He's a little better than Bumpus Jones, but not a lot. So Sabo started at third that game. He was the Reds' other starter in that game. He went 0 for 2. Larkin pinch ran, stole a base, a la Chris Sabo 2 years before. Dibble and Myers, 2 of the Nasty Boys, each pitched a scoreless inning in that game. The National League lost that game 2-0. This is when by this time the American League was starting to win it a lot.
Yeah.
So, and our last thing was, of course, 2015. Todd Frazier home run derby at Great American Ballpark, and we know Todd didn't play that great after the All-Star game, but it sure was fun that night.
That was a lot of fun.
I was actually that night I was covering a Dayton Dragons game, so I'm in the press box at the Dragons game, and we got a TV in there, and it's up on the wall beside me, and we've got the home run derby on, and between innings, all the guys working the scoreboard and the clocks and the video boards and all that, there would always be a handful of guys would come down to see what was going on, and then they'd have to run back, But there were a number when he won it, when he hit the final, however it finished, there were several people standing there, and everybody started cheering. It was a lot of fun just to be there. I wasn't at the game or at the park that night to see it, but just to be around other people who were big diehard Reds fans, it was fun. More fun, than sitting by yourself on your couch watching it. So it was pretty cool. So anyway, so that's our list of, in our lifetime, top all-star moments, and of course the 70s dominated.
Now, of course, tonight is the home run derby again. You just talked about Frazier.
Right.
No one really cares as much, I don't think, without a red in it.
No.
But I assume it'll either be Stanton, the hometown guy,
you would think,
in Miami, or Justice.
You mean Judge?
Judge. Sorry,
David Justice. That's a long way back. A Cincinnati area boy.
Yeah,
but still.
Kentucky. Fort Thomas.
Yeah. So, a few other Reds notes here. You had mentioned, that's 7. That had to be a record. Well, 3 times the Reds had 7 players make the All-Star team. First in 1939. Such recognizable names as Paul Derringer, which I know that name. I recognize that name. Lonnie Fry, Ivel Goodman, Ernie Lombardi, Frank McCormick, Johnny Vandermeer, and Bucky Walters. So a couple
Bucky
really
Walters.
good. Bucky was a great pitcher. 76. Bench, Concepcion, Foster, Griffey, Perez, Morgan, and Rose. And I think I'm looking at my notes, and I don't have a year on this, but I think it's the next year, 77. Bench, Concepcion, Foster, Griffey. Yeah, it would be. Bench, Concepcion, Foster, Griffey, Seaver, Morgan, and Rose. Now, twice in the 50s, they put 8 guys on the team. And one of those was because in 57, there was this famous or infamous stuffing of the ballot box campaign. Have you read about this before?
Oh, yeah.
The newspaper got involved in this, I think. And anyway, it was a big thing. There was this. So Ford Frick, who was a commissioner, he said, wait a minute. We got too many Reds starting. Something's going on. They found out about this campaign they did to stuff the ballot box. So he took Gus Bell and Wally Post out of the outfield starting positions, kept them on the team.
Was Wally injured? There was an injured Red anyway.
He might have been. There might have been. And he gave those spots to Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. So, if you get benched for Willie Mays and Hank Aaron, I guess,
And I think,
I mean, there's worse guys you could get benched for.
and I think Hank Aaron or Willie set the record for the most
All-star bats.
Games played.
Oh, yeah, it's like 24 or something.
But part of that's
bats
fixed
too.
Because between 59 and 62, they had two All-Star games a year.
Right.
Which I didn't know until I read that.
So, 56 teams, 57. The guys that were on both were Ed Bailey, Ted Kluszewski, Gus Bell, Roy McMillan, Joe Nuxall, Frank Robinson, and Johnny Temple. A guy named Brooks Lawrence, a pitcher who's from this area, he pitched on the 56 team.
Former coach of Wilmington College baseball team.
Was he? Yeah.
Coached against him.
Smoked
in the dugout.
Summer League in the Springfield area was called the Lawrence Haddocks League.
Oh, really?
Brooks Lawrence, Harvey Haddocks, both from this area. Johnny Temple made both. I think I mentioned him. Roy McMillan was on both. A guy named Don Hoke made the 57 team. Temple led off both games. Never got a hit.
Yeah, I saw that.
So interesting there. Other just tidbits. They've been 5 games in Cincinnati. The Reds in 70 are one of 10 teams to host a World All-Star game and a World Series in the same season. It's happened 10 times. 70 was the highest rated TV All-Star game ever. I think I mentioned that. Joe DiMaggio and Pete Rose are the only 2 players to ground into double plays 3 times during their All-Star careers. Of course.
That's something you want to be known for.
But when you play in like 18 of them,
right.
17 or whatever Rose did, and I'm sure DiMaggio played in a bunch too. Ewell Blackwell pitched in a record 6 consecutive games from 46 to 51, shares that record with Early Wynn. Kluszewski had 2 doubles in 56. He's one of 8 people to do that. Morgan is one of 5 guys to lead off the game with a home run, which he did in 77. Bench is one of 12 and the only Red to strike out 3 times in a game, which he did in 70 in front of the home crowd. Vandermeer shares this record with 3 others. He struck out 6 in the 43 All-Star game. Rose, 5 positions, which we've talked about before: second, third, first, right, and left. This was an interesting one. Mickey Mantle from 54 to 60, Joe Morgan from 70 to 77, and Dave Winfield from 82 to 88, all Hall of Famers. The only players in All-Star history to each bat safely in 7 back-to-back All-Star games.
Wow.
That's a pretty amazing.
That's a big deal.
That's a pretty amazing number. Other Reds to start: Paul Derringer in 39 and 40, Bucky Walters in 44, Ewell Blackwell in 47, Bob Perkey in 61. They went to the World Series that year. Jim O'Toole in 63. And as we mentioned a little bit ago, Soto in 83 and Armstrong in 90. So we haven't had a pitcher starting the All-Star game since 1990.
Wow.
That's a long time. Bench and Clue had 2 hits 3 times. And the most RBIs were Foster in 76, who we mentioned as his all-star performance, and Clue had 3 in 56. So those are kind of some other interesting notes, I think, to go for. The couple other little things. The last Red to get a hit in the All-Star game, Scott Rowland, 2010. Griffey Jr. Had 2 RBIs in 2007. He's the last Red to drive in a run in an All-Star game.
10 years.
Yeah. And so some of those, I've got a longer list of those, but I think
that ends tonight. I think
Joey
Votto late in the game, because he's not going to be a starter, so he'll come in late. He's going to get a big extra base hit, home run or something late in the game, winning run, MVP.
Oh, well, that would be great. I would be excited.
Opposite field.
I'd be excited for that.
We haven't mentioned about the 1978 All-Star game.
Well, what happened then?
Pete Rose had a base hit.
Pete Rose always got base hits.
If that game's included, he hit 45 consecutive games.
There you go.
How about that?
There you go. Figure that one out.
Good one,
That's
Cam.
a good one. That's a good one. So, all right. Last week, our Reds' career leader in home run frequency was. What's your question?
Oh yeah. And you guys guessed it. I didn't think you would, but Adam Dunn.
Adam Dunn. All right.
Every 14 point something at bats.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing.
All right. Do we have a question for this week, or do I just need to make up one on the fly here?
I don't think you've done one, have you?
Yeah,
Jeff?
go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
I'll make up one on the fly here. Who was the last Red to get 2 hits in an All-Star game? And it was. I'll give you a hint. It was in the early '90s. And we'll leave it at that.
We can't guess.
Can't guess on the air. No, we would break the code there. We can't do that. So, but we'll talk about that. So it's kind of a really weird question, but I was forced to come up with something on the spot. So, a leadoff hitter for the Reds. We'll leave it. We'll give you that too.
Probably played on the West Coast.
Yeah, it might have. All right. So. Well, that wraps up our first annual All-Star edition. So enjoy the game, everybody. Hope Tom's right. I hope Joey is an MVP. I hope Zack gets, as you said, gets at least his one AB and gets a knock.
Yeah.
That would be great.
It would be.
It'd be fun.
And to all our Reds non-All-Stars who are All-Stars in our hearts, get some rest.
Get some rest. You're gonna need it.
Don't pick up a bat. Don't pick up a glove.
Pick up a fishing pole.
Go out, go to the beach, go to the mountains, whatever. Get away from it, especially Eugenio Suarez. He needs it, and come back strong.
Some of these young guys need to learn to go a whole season here.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Good. Well, join us next time, a few games into the second half, when Kim will say, "I've got this idea for a new sabermetric called EDP."
EDP.
When Tom says,
So that was Jeff.
"Really? You texted that?" And I say, well, I'm not sure what I'll say, but I'll think of something. So, and as we always say, go Reds.
Go Reds.
Go Reds.